So welcome everyone from Ossining and beyond. This is a great moment, I think. We are looking to have a series of 6 engagements with the public. You could tune in or zoom in to all of them, some of them, part of them. We hope that you become engaged in informing the village on your opinions about the project in whole, in part, in whatever way you want to look at it. I think the question for tonight, the topic for tonight, and the headline is why we're here, how we got here, and all that fun stuff. Simply put, and I will not be speaking for long, is as follows. First of all, I'm Rika Levin. I'm the mayor of Ossining. There are panelists on here that include village staff, attorney, planner, village manager, assistant village manager. I think almost all the trustees, but they will all be here. The developer that is being discussed to go with this project, we have Paul Ferrelli, who is the engineer who's highly involved, and I'm sure I've missed someone, and I apologize in advance. The point of it all being is we're here to answer questions, we're here to listen, and that is the goal. I, for one, will not be speaking at all after this introduction because my goal tonight is to actually listen to constituents and hear the questions as clearly as possible. So that would be my way of doing it, but my colleagues will approach this as they want to. This is the first of the series, meaning that a lot of it might be some background, both about how we got here, what the DPW site, as we call it, which is down by the waterfront, looks like today, the history of it, where we'd like to take it. I should make it known that both the Board of Trustees last year voted unanimously to improve this particular part of our community, which has been sitting vacant for decades, being used for various purposes, which you'll hear about in the presentation, which is quite impressive, frankly. The other piece of it is that the board this year, which includes new member Dana White, also unanimously is in support of doing something better than what it is today for the future of Ossining. And that, I think, really frames the conversation today, which will be mostly run, I believe, by village manager and our planner. But you have a slew of people with expertise and history to answer your questions. So please take it away, Ms. Diatori.
Thank you so much, Mayor Levin. As Mayor Levin said, the village has for some time been contemplating options for the DPW site. So tonight we're going to talk specifically about why the road that we've taken are the RFQ that we initiated in 2019, the request for qualifications to seek developers to develop solutions that would address many of the issues that have come to us through the public over the past several years, including the need for affordability, green space, parking. We address a lot of different issues here, as well as retail development. So with that, I would like to hand this over to our Director of Planning, Jaime Martinez, who will take you through an overview of the project. We'll also be hearing a little bit from the developer on their credentials. But then afterwards, as the mayor said, this is really about hearing from you. So this is an opportunity for you to provide comments, feedback, ask questions. We will be answering your questions. If we can't answer them tonight, they will be answered and we will be following up. And we also have 5 more presentations about this site that deal with specific aspects of the project and the project features, as well as the impact on the community, on the schools, on the environment. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Jaime.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Karen. First, I want to thank the attendees who are here. It looks like we have about 11 attendees that are here to find out all about this project, or at least find out a little bit more. And so we're super excited that you're here to engage and learn more about the project and give us your opinion. So with that, I am going to share my screen. And if everybody just let me know, can you see the screen? other members?
I can see it.
Okay, great. All right. So this is the why here, why this, why now. It's the presentation all about the proposed site development at the current DPW yard on Water Street. So let's go right into a little bit of details about the overview of the site itself. So for some site history, it's a 3.3 acre site bounded by Water Street, Main Street, Seeker Road, and Central Avenue. And it's traversed by the Sing Sing Kill Brook. The site contains significant steep slopes on the eastern portion of the lot, and it is a contaminated brownfield site. So a little bit about that brownfield aspect. Previously, the site was used as a coal gas plant from the 1850s to the 1940s, which had a significant impact on the site itself. It affected the groundwater and the soil on the site and has actually had an impact on other sites downgrading from it with coal tar. This site was subject to a New York State DEC voluntary cleanup agreement between Con Edison and DEC. Currently, it's being used as a DPW yard, and as I'm sure many people know, it is sort of providing a unsightly first impression when you get off the train because it's visible right there from the train station on the east side. And it also prevents the extension of the Sing Sing Kill Greenway from going on to Water Street. So we have a great video that was put together by OPD and narrated by Paul Fraioli. So let's hear it.
30 Water Street. This 3.4 acre parcel, consisting of 5 separate tax parcels in the village of Ossining, is the former home of the village's DPW facility. It is now primarily used as a transfer facility for organic waste, seen there at the right of the video, and other recyclable or materials used in DPW operations. It is bordered by Water Street on the western boundary, Central Avenue on the northern boundary, and Lower Main Street on the southern boundary of the parcel. Once completed, approximately 1.5 acres of green space will remain on the eastern portion of the property, connected to Water Street through a park being constructed along the Kilbrook Trail, extending up through the green portion of the parcel on the easternmost portions to connect pedestrians to the village's Riverwalk, southern connection off of Central Avenue. Access to Lower Main Street, as well as access to the village's Kilbrook Riverwalk, will be an asset this parcel offers in addition to the affordable and workforce housing component.
All right. This project actually was developed through an RFQ process with some specific guiding principles. At the beginning, it was developed with public input and was created with a clear set of goals that aligned with the desires of the community rather than an RFP process that would yield ideas of what a developer thought would work best, which was really important to the process. Hold on a second. Has this corrected everything?
No, the bar's still there.
No. But we can see it's moving around a little bit, so I don't know what the issue is. It's there now. It's much smaller, so I would just leave it like that.
Okay, all right. All right, so the RFQ details, it created an affordable residential opportunity. The project should create an affordable residential opportunity that would be attractive to a range of income levels in the village in all generations. It was also important that it would execute some of the key policy strategies of the Ossining's 2017 Housing Needs Assessment, one of which was provide a deeper and broader level of affordability requirements for new housing development to ensure access to affordable housing by lower income households and it support mixed income housing. It was also important that it provided a public amenity that facilitated a pedestrian connection between Upper Main Street and Station Plaza, and that it provided public access along the Sing Sing Kill and make a connection to the Sing Sing Kill Greenway. We also wanted it to encourage additional development in the area, employ modern materials and sustainable practices, that it would be pedestrian friendly, and it would also create space for commercial opportunities and community programming. A little bit about Wilder Bartlett. So of the 8 respondents that we did have, Wilder Bartlett Partners provided the strongest response to the RFQ, in part due to their proven and successful track record for similar projects, strong reputation, as well as a well-aligned RFQ that was aligned with the guiding principles. It was also important to know that the project could be financed, could be actually developed. So you want to make sure that you have a developer that is able to build the project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bill Balter to talk a little bit about himself and his team.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. So because we're really here to listen to the public, I'm going to do this super quickly. Wilder Balter Partners is a development company. We're located at the old Reader's Digest campus, now called Chappaqua Crossing. I am a Westchester resident. I grew up in Hastings. I now live in Mount Kisco. We have, go to the next slide, please. We have, there you go, thank you. So we have done about 20-something developments in Westchester. We've done about $500 million of development in the tri-state area. But we really try to focus on Westchester and the Hudson Valley as much as possible. We're very experienced in market rate housing, affordable housing, and mixed income housing. We're currently building in Peekskill, sort of similar development to what we're proposing here. And all of the components that we're proposing here are things we've done before, including brownfield projects like this that are very challenging sites. The topography of this site, we've dealt with that type of thing before. Basically, this is a very exciting project for us because it's a way to take something that is a very underutilized property that's not an attractive piece of property, but an incredibly valuable location for the village, and turn it into something that's a valuable asset that creates a lot of wins for the village and the residents of the village, including the Greenway connection, the housing, different levels of affordable housing, as well as obviously the Greenway connection, retail, and a large community space. Can you go to the next slide, please? So Chappaqua Crossing is an example of a development. We redeveloped a cupola building, 64 mixed income apartments, affordable in that, 40 to 90% of AMI. Complicated construction, but something that really came out very well. Just go to the next slide, please. In Peekskill, the development I mentioned before, it's a similar kind of development. It's a mixed income development on a steep site in a brownfield. That development is going to be LEED Gold. And it's just, again, we thought for Peekskill in a very similar way. It was a very underutilized piece of property that creates a connection between their downtown and their waterfront. So we're excited to do that. And this is a follow-up project in Ossining. We're super excited about it. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So a little bit about the building itself. The current proposal includes a mixed-use building with 109 residential units with a range of affordability from 30% to 80% area median income. There are 12 residential units at 30% AMI, 18 units at 40% AMI, 23 units at 50% AMI, 20 units at 60% AMI, 20 at 70% AMI, and 16 units at 80% AMI. So first, what is AMI? So for many of you, area median income is something that you may not be familiar with, but what it is basically the sort of the median income of the people in a designated area. Area median income is different for different areas and is determined by a set of federally mandated rules. The AMI for Ossining is actually based off of Westchester County AMI numbers rather than specific numbers for only the village of Ossining. The income rules vary by household size. So, there is one set of AMI for a one-person household versus a four-person household, and et cetera. And it's quite a bit different. The Ossining median household income is actually $70,177. And you can look that up on the Census Quick Facts table about the village of Ossining. But for Westchester County, 100% AMI for a family of four, household of four, is $125,000. So 60% AMI, which is a lot of what many of these units would be, is actually closer to what the median income for Ossining is, which is $75,500. So a little bit about the unit layout. Significant shifts have been made from the original RFQ proposal, if you did get a chance to take a look at that prior to this meeting. The current iteration actually has fewer units, so it was originally at 126 and is now down to 109. Of that, there are 27 one-bedroom units, 55 two-bedroom units, and 27 three-bedroom units. And the units themselves can be flexible on bedroom sizes and income levels, and that's subject to the funding constraints for the project. This is a little close-up of the rendering of the property that you've seen, I'm sure, on this presentation and in other places. And this is a view of the elevations. So you can kind of see there is the property on Main Street, which is only about 2 stories plus a little peak roof, and it is taller than the building due to the way that the building is sort of set inside of the cutout from the steep slopes. So the building's not looking to dig into that wall anymore than it already has been, but rather put the building nestled in between the sort of the sheer hill on the southern part of the property. So a little bit about the ground floor layout. So the ground floor will have space for commercial opportunities right by the waterfront, and they're right by the Water Street, and there will also be space for community programming and about 6,100 square feet of ground floor retail space and 4,600 square feet of community space. And you can see here the retail is right by Water Street, and the community space is on the other side of the building, with the lobby and the amenities for the people who live in the building in the middle. Some of the public amenities. So in addition to the community space that's going to be in the building, there are other major public amenities. One is the extension of the Sing Sing Kill Greenway from its current termination point on the north side of Central Avenue. So it'll go from where it is now through the Central Avenue arch and would extend through the site all the way to Water Street. That's going to, nearly double the size of the existing trail, which is, I know, fantastic for anybody who's ever, wanted to walk down there or who likes to walk down there now. This will also have increased green space along the Sing Sing Kill with some landscape sitting park areas to attract pedestrians to the site. And there's going to, be public access to the Water Street connection with a consideration for potentially putting in a public elevator and staircase off of Main Street to get people down to Water Street without having to go down that hill. We're also looking at a separate parking structure that would be across from the building on the other side of the Sing Sing Kill Brook. And there would be 159 units for the building itself, as well as 48 public spaces for the village to use. And kind of get a sense of that here. This is the public parking garage and the Sing Sing Kill walkway extension. So the project timeline, the approval requires a lot of steps to go through this process. The beginning of this step was, obviously the RFQ that was put out and the selection of the preferred developer, which was completed last year. At that point, we have to go through the process of developing the land acquisition and disposition agreement, which is overseeing the sale of the property to the developer from the village, as well as the community engagement process. And both of those items are currently ongoing. Once that process ends, we would look if everything moves forward for the approval of the LATA, then it would move into the State Environmental Quality Review Act Environmental Impacts Review. It would be sent out to the Environmental Advisory Council, which is a council for the village. And if everything was done, through that process, you would look to end the process with a negative declaration of adverse environmental impact. And it would also need to go through site plan approval by the planning board. It would have to get another special permit from the board of trustees. And at that point, we would look to implement the LATA itself. So today you're here, obviously, at a community engagement meeting, and we are having a whole slate of community engagement meetings, 6 in fact. So the first meeting on this project was actually held in 1024, so this is not the first meeting. That one was held on the site, and you can see the video of that at ossiningdpwsite.com. But we also want you to attend the upcoming meetings. You can find the schedule at www.villageofossinning.org/Ossining-DPW-site, or you can find it on the community calendar on the front page, which you can connect to from the front page. And the dates of those are, for the upcoming one is February 2nd, then February 13th, then February 25th, then March 9th, and then March 18th. And they're going to be covering various different topics from the, how the project is going to be financed, to the green park, the extension of the Sing Sing Kill, the brownfield contaminations, impacts on schools, and if you are interested in living in this property, how you would be able to apply to get into the building. And with that, we want to hear from you. So we're here, to get your questions and answer where we can, and take down notes and provide answers later. So first, we definitely want you to attend future meetings, but we want to hear from you today. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Karen.
Thank you, Jaime. So as we, we hope we gave you a broad enough overview, but we're here really to get your comments, answer any questions you have. And as you can see, we have 5 more presentations after this that deal with the project from more specific angles as well. So happy to take questions right now. Seeing any hands up? Anybody?
We have one person named Joe. Would you like me to promote them?
Yes, please. Good evening, Joe. What is your question or comment?
So I have to say, I think I like this project, at least in the concept. I'd like to study the distribution of housing a little bit. I'm a little concerned about what we're doing to encourage sort of more market rate housing in Austin, particularly types of units that are not stacked on one another. This project, we can't accommodate it here, but I think the rest of the village, we should be cognizant, particularly of seniors who are living in big houses, would like to get out of them. And we need a way to accommodate them because a lot of them have disposable income, and Austin really could use disposable income. But I like the concept. I'm also a bit concerned about the number of 3-bedroom units, particularly when it comes to large structures like this. The real important part of this is there needs to be space for kids that will obviously show up here because it's not a 55 and over development, that they actually have a place to play besides the street. we have some kind of interesting examples of where we forgot about that and some projects been built over the last 15 or so years. But I know later on we'll see the economic study, and that's sort of something that's always near and dear to my heart, because we all know the taxes that were afforded here, particularly when it comes to the school taxes. Not so much. I think the village has done a pretty good job of keeping things in line, but you know, there's a tail, a very big tail that is on this dog called Ossining, called the school district. They don't get a lot to say about what we build, but they bear the impact of what comes. So I will, there was actually a question that I saw with a hand raised before, so I didn't think I'd get my chance this fast. But anyway, I think so far I'm encouraged. And the design, by the way, if it turns out like that, is actually quite nice, considering some of the other edifices that we've actually built on the waterfront. This is a sort of a major step forward.
Thank you for that. Just briefly, because you mentioned a few different things, we are also in the process of our comprehensive plan. And indeed, we are looking at other ways to create multifamily opportunities and provide options for seniors and home ownership in smaller parcels and more and keep, you know, in the areas in the T-zone and the two-family zone and other places in the village, building in a line with already existing, keeping the character and the flavor of the community, but also allowing for some of the things that you mentioned. And that's in addition to the work that we're doing, looking at this particular development on the DPW site. So thank you for that. I do notice that somebody has answered a question. We were happy to read questions. You can also raise your hand. So I see a question in the Q&A box, and this is from Bob Schloss. Bob, I'm going to ask you, would you like us to bring you up and you can ask these questions? Because I see you have a couple of questions here. And so can we bring Bob forward to?
Bob Bob, are you the 8? I don't know if you're
No,
8.
but it says Bob Schloss. It says it, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I see now, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, okay, I'm unmuted. Very interesting. So I had 3 projects. 2 of them are related to the environment and 1 to the construction process. So the one about the construction process is whether we can write our contract with Wilder Balter, or would we want to, or would they accept it if we put this in the contract, that a certain percentage of the construction workforce or subcontractors be residents, let's say from the town of Ossining? I'll just say the other 2 questions and then I'll be quiet and listen to the answers. There was a study maybe 2 years ago where a class from Cornell did a projection of how the waterfront would be affected by climate change over decades. So my second question is about anticipating higher water levels from the Hudson at high tides during the life of the building. And the third question is about if people who live there end up owning electric vehicles, will there be a way for them to charge? I did hear the comment that there might be a separate garage building. So those are my 3 questions. Thank you.
So I'd like to direct these questions to Bill Balter to speak specifically, certainly about the first one, but the other 2 also, I believe he can answer most effectively.
Hi, good questions, I like them. So let me go backwards. The electric, we're actually really embracing electric in our developments. Our Tarrytown development, we just decided to do all electric with all geothermal heat and hot water. We have charging stations in the building, and I'm a big believer in it. So we'll certainly have electric charging in the garage. We do a lot with local hiring. We actually in our Peak School development have an apprenticeship program which is one thing we're doing. We also reach out to the village, who, sorry, excuse me, in that case, the city rather, when we're looking to fill any job on the project for our own staff. And the city there has been very helpful, actually. Similar issue, we have an MWBE, Woman and Minority Owned Business Requirements, with the funding sources that are significant, and that is generally also leads to more local people working here. On the question about sorry, what was your third question?
Sea level rise. We had talked about the Cornell adaptive study.
Oh yeah, sure. So we have looked at, we have that model that they looked at, and we have models from Scenic Hudson as well that have looked at the sea level rise. And we've actually been working with the environmental group and one of the funding agencies to make sure that the project is being developed in a sustainable way, not just for the current flood maps, but for future flood mapping. What's interesting about this site, briefly, because I think this will come up a lot now and in the environmental review process. What's interesting about this site is that it's actually about 7 feet higher than Harbor Square. On this side of Water Street, which is, I guess, east of Water Street, the site actually rises up. So that we don't really have the issue that necessarily would be on the other side of Water Street on the Harbor Square side, but we did raise our building to make sure that we wouldn't have issues with future flooding.
Karen, when I'm piggybacking something, one of the questions that was related to the contract in here, and I'm going to ask Paul to help me with this, because I think we are the sort of, I want to say the senior people on this panel system. Many years back, when one of the first waterfront projects was coming through, which is it was brought up, the Ginsburg development there. One of the things that the village board did, and correct me if I'm mistaken, Paul, we actually said that there should be a minimum of projects where it should be hiring local, and there should be a training portion of that. So in regards to unions, the wagers. So we had passed, I believe it was a resolution where we were encouraging this kind of hiring local contractors and people to work on these projects. And my understanding is when the Ginsburg project happened, there was actually local contractors that were hired for that particular project. So did I miss something, Paul? Do you want to correct me on some of this stuff?
I'm not sure if the resolution became legally binding in the latter for that project, but I do recall that a lot of the subcontractors on that site, well, a lot being the operative word, there were subcontractors on that site that were local, if not Ossining, definitely close proximity. And I do remember that there was labor force there that included Ossining residents. But I don't know if that was legally binding or it just ended up like Bill had alluded to earlier. It just happens by default.
I'm gonna defer that question, not now, but Stuart, would you mind looking into that exactly what the language was? And I can go back to see if I find my notes from many years back in regards to that. But I think we should get definitely a clear understanding of that, and I definitely encourage local workforce to be included in this project.
Deputy Mayor, that's Chapter 77 of the Village Code, the apprenticeship training program.
Thank you, Stuart.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. We have one more person raising their hand. It's actually a number 827-560-704.
That may be me.
Oh, and it looks like, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So we have two questions that came in the Q&A. So these are from Emily Sack. Can the building be engineered to accommodate a green roof? I understand that New York City requires that all new buildings have green roofs which provide environmental services. So I think, Bill, that one's for you.
Sure. Yes, the building, I don't know, Jaime, if it's easy to do to bring up the building rendering so we can point. Thank you. While Jaime's doing that, as was said during the presentation, the building climbs the hill. Okay, great. So as you can see, the building climbs the hill. So on the lowest level, the Water Street side of the building, you can see there's a flat roof. That is actually a green roof, as is the level above it. On the 6th floor is also a green roof. So there'll be green elements, not only for people to go out and be able to enjoy the views and to sit, there'll also be green infrastructure on the roof. There may be as well on the main roof. We haven't gotten there yet. But there'll certainly be a good amount of green roofs on the building. We're doing that right now in Peekskill, and on our development we're about to start in Tarrytown. We're also doing a large green roof. Again, we're big believers of it, and part of this is this will be a LEED Gold building as well. So one of the elements of that makes it LEED, helps us to get the LEED Gold, is to have green roofs.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for the next person? The
yes.
827? Okay, no problem.
Yes, sorry about that. I got a little bit confused, but please, you're on and you can ask your question.
I think it's myself. This is Linda Levine. I have
Oh,
several
hi,
questions.
Linda.
How are you?
Good.
I have several questions. Can you talk a little bit about the brownfields and what is the material that's actually going to be cleaned from that site?
So, Bill, I think this is something that maybe you and Paul can talk to. Paul, do you want to talk about just the history of the site and what's there?
So referencing Jaime's presentation, he detailed it a little bit more, but it used to be a coal tar plant, which was eventually, the site was eventually purchased by Con Edison. But during those coal tar operations, decades ago, 100 years ago, there was a byproduct of the acronym DNAPL, which don't ask me what each of those stands for. They were detected on the site, and the migration of those contaminants that Jaime alluded to in his presentation was the same contaminant that they remediated at Harbor Square. I'll let Bill get into it a little bit more by leading him in like this. I think a lot of the remediation, if you will, might be in situ remediation, and to the point where some of it is just encapsulated to be determined and monitored via wells, similar to the wells that they have down on the Square site that the DEC monitors. And the remediation, the end game, the remediation is the highest level that the DEC requires to construct residential housing. Residential housing dictates that the remediation is at its highest level. Bill?
Sure. I'm going to have Jack chime in a moment with a specific answer to the materials that are the contaminants. But before I do so, let me sort of give the public sort of a higher level look at this. So Con Ed is responsible for cleaning up the property, but the cleanup that they would do would not allow this property to be used in an economic, significant kind of way, especially for residential housing. So as was done on Harbor Square, where they also had a site that was contaminated by Con Ed, in that case, Ginsburg took on the cleanup and they did it because otherwise Con Ed would not have done it to that level. So essentially what's going on is we want to have a site, and I say we, I think the community and we and the village all want a site where there are not limitations on what can be done on the property. We want to have our residents here. We want to have retail, community space, and a linear park that allows people to go from the existing greenway down through the property to the waterfront. So we want to get the site cleaned up to an extent greater than what Con Ed is required to do. So with that, Jack, can you just speak to the contaminants?
Yeah. So based on test borings that have been done on site, along with history about the site and knowledge, there is remains from the Con Ed gas plant, and it's specifically there's a few tanks that are located underground, about 15 feet underground, that contain a coal tar remain that was used or it was actually produced from the plants, and certain tanks are actually still left on the site. They're just about 15 feet underground. So they are considered contaminants, and they are still located on the site. So
the problem basically is that when you have a site like this, just the best comparison is if you had a leaking oil tank in your house and you didn't know it was leaking, over time it contaminates the whole property. And essentially this property has been contaminated by the on-site leakage, but also has contaminated down river. So I think part of it is to clean up the site and stop it from continuing to contaminate downstream.
Correct.
So are there going to be numerous agencies involved in the cleanup of the property?
The agency that's really involved here is New York State DEC.
Uh-huh.
So we have, and that's through something called the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program.
Okay.
We're doing that right now in a large development in New Rochelle. We've done it in Larchmont, and we're doing one right now in Peekskill, all through the Brownfield Cleanup Program. And it's essentially the governor's office created this program many years ago to take sites like this that would not have gotten redeveloped because the economics are too great to do this level of cleanup. And they've created a program where they essentially may give you a financial incentive to clean up the site as long as you do more than just clean up the site. They're trying to create development on a property like this so that it isn't just a park, but essentially you're building a building that has a multi-level building. Just the way it works, you need to build something that's got some vertical size to it in order for the program to make sense. So we're basically following exactly what the program requires. And while there'll be other agencies involved in many aspects of this development, your own village, Westchester County in many ways, specifically the brownfield cleanup is through the DEC.
So the money will flow from New York. It flows from New York State, and it flows to the developers of the project. Is that the way it works?
It's a little more complicated than that because it's a very complicated financial project because of the affordable housing. But essentially what happens is the state issues tax credits that the equity provider in this development, who's helping to subsidize the affordable housing, they basically get the tax credits. So
okay.
Picture it as part of your, sort of like your construction financing.
Yep. I just have one more question, Mr. Bolter. I took a look at the project that you're developing in Peekskill. It looks very nice. I like the way that, I know that area of Peekskill, and I like the way the building blends into the neighborhood. It's not out of character, and I want to compliment you on that. And I like the way the building, the prospective building looks at Ossining. I wanted to ask with the, if there is going to be any housing that is specifically going to be for seniors or the handicapped, and will come already with safety bars in apartments, and the handicap units will have amenities adjusted for people possibly in wheelchairs.
Love that question. So there are UFAS units required, which is basically exactly what you're asking for. So the building is 100% handicapped accessible and adaptable, but then some of the units, I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but my guess is it's about 10 or 12 units in the building will be adapted as opposed to adaptable, meaning all of the measures you just asked about will actually be done in the units.
Okay, and I do have one more question. In terms of the taxes, is this going to be a pilot or?
The answer, which is very general because it needs to be, is that we are anticipating that a pilot will be necessary for this to be viable, but we still,
Okay.
the village and us need to work that out.
Okay. I realize that question is premature, but I was just curious. Thank you very much. Again, that building in Peekskill looks like it's lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We have a question that was written in. This is from Juliana Simon Fox. I know that there has been a call out for community outreach in the past, and there's 11 people on this call, but actually since that email, that message, it's up to 15. What is going to be done to involve more people in the conversation? This is a great question, and one we, always struggle with. So as you know, we're doing this tonight, but this is being recorded. This presentation that you saw tonight will be pushed out. It will be available on websites. It will be pushed out through social media. And if you can't be here, if you want to share this with your friends, please do so. You will be able to write in. During the presentation, Jaime listed different, all the information's there of when you can send emails, you can call us. You can get your input in, and we will have many opportunities throughout the next several weeks to get a lot of input. So we're working on as many ways to do this, but what we wanted to do, because we know it's really hard for everybody to come out on a particular night, is make sure that all of these things are recorded and available and shared widely, and that people know that they can continue to ask questions. We have a rolling list of Q&A that is updated regularly. We'll be updating it subsequent to this meeting. So that's another place to get a lot of information. But really, this is something that we always struggle with, is making sure that we engage enough people. And we sincerely want to have as much input as possible. So again, we'll be sharing this. If you have any thoughts about other ways we might be able to communicate, we're happy to hear that as well. So thank you for that question, but we will be pushing this information out in as many ways as possible. And you can always call the Village 16 Croton Avenue for more information, or respond to the email addresses that were provided in the presentation here. So.
Yeah, Karen, if I could just add to that, we did, this has gone out through the e-blast, of course, which has about 6,000 residents. It was on Facebook. It was seen, we have the stats on that, it was seen by about 3,000 people. And, of course, along with the ongoing series, there's just been a ton of outreach. I know that the mayor's message did have reference to this. So, it's tough, even in COVID times, even in non-COVID times, it's tough to get, all the people you want. You can never have enough people, but we are certainly working as hard as we can to make sure that everyone knows about this project.
If I could just add, it's always a challenge. I personally know that there are 3 other Zoom meetings, since I was invited to them, going on tonight with village residents. So people who are active tend to be active on many things. So there's always a competition, but I'll be honest with you, the reality is that 11 people on this call, send out to all of your friends makes it 11,000. So we are encouraging people. I also recognize that given technology these days, it's actually has become convenient for some people not to participate here, but actually say to themselves, I'm a late night person. I'll look at it during lunch tomorrow. So I'm actually quite optimistic that I would rather see 100 people on this call, but I'm also optimistic that the technology allows this to be really widely spread. But I truly find that if each person on here asks the questions, everything's being recorded, send it around to everybody and if you think that there are people interested or can add material information in other communities that may have gone through this, that maybe know the developer, that may be interested in this project, may experience it, we're truly encouraging people. We've set up 6 sessions because we want to have more, not less, conversation about something that affects us and is a multi-year project and will be with us for decades to come. Truthfully, everybody on this call is really wanting more and more engagement. That's the whole goal here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep adding to this, but one other thing, the last time that this came in front of the Board of Trustees for discussion, one of the big things is we need signs up in front of the property talking about the project. There's huge signs right out in front. And one of the other concerns was, well, what about the people who live next door? And so we went and flyered every single house in the area. I did that personally, so I know what happened.
Thank you. So we are happy to take more questions. So if you have a question, you want to type it in or raise your hand, please feel free. We set this time aside and we're more than happy to answer more questions.
We have another one from Julia Simon Fox. I'm going to bring her over.
Okay, great.
Hi. More about the community engagement. Is this information also going to be available in Spanish for folks?
Yes, so on the website, everything is translated in Spanish, and we do put out the posts in English and Spanish. And if necessary or required, we can arrange to have, we have several native Spanish speakers here. If somebody requires translation, we can, so the written material, the posts, everything is done in English and Spanish. And if necessary, we can have questions asked in Spanish as well. And we are looking at ways where we may be able to get, as we record these, the transcripts of these meetings translated to Spanish too. That's something we're looking at.
May I add to that?
Sure.
Please, if you know of a group, assuming social distancing, etc., I have taken individuals down to give them a tour of the area. I'm happy to do that if you have 5, 6, 15 people where we're wearing masks and we're socially distanced. And I'm happy to take them down. I do have somebody that can translate as we're walking. So I'm at mayor@villageofossining.org. We're all at BOT@villageofossining.org. So please contact if you have a group. You know, as long as we maintain under a pandemic appropriate distancing, I'm happy to do a tour, if you will, of the area and the downtown and answer questions that I can, and what I can't answer, we'll write them down and we'll get it back to you.
Thank you. Hey, we have a question that was just typed in from Marissa Caruso. Is there any way a certain number of units can be set aside specifically to address housing needs for current Ossining residents? So this is a great question, and certainly we want to do things for the residents of Ossining. That's a big driver of this project. There are certain rules in developing housing that, especially this type of housing, that prohibits you from reserving the housing just for residents of your community. And that's because that's really an anti-discrimination feature, because as you can imagine, there are communities where if they built housing and said no one else can move there, that would be problematic. So that is not something, given the nature of funding for this project and the way it's being done, it's really against fair housing practices. However, when we're talking about, are we building this to the needs of Ossining residents, that is something that absolutely is in the forefront here, because the project is designed based on the needs assessment that we did for Ossining residents. What typically happens, and I think maybe Bill can speak to this, I can speak to this as well from my former experience. When whether buildings like this are leased up either first come first serve or by lottery, the vast majority of applicants tend to be from the community where the building is located, thus increasing the potential dramatically that residents will get into those buildings. Also, what happens is, as those buildings, you know, these are rental properties, so they lease up annually. Once you're on the waiting list, again, the annual lease up, those aren't done by lottery. That's just filling as the units become available, going off a waiting list. So that also increases the chances for residents of the community to be served. But unfortunately, you know, as much as we'd like to do things specific for our community, it's very difficult to define that. And it's very, very difficult to do that in a way that doesn't run the risk of being discriminatory. So Bill, I don't know, you might want to add, you have a lot of experience doing this throughout the county. So perhaps you want to add?
The two things I would say are, first, Karen, what Karen said is really very true. This will be a lottery because it's required to be a lottery, and there'll be a lot of people in the lottery from all over the place, including Ossining. But the people who actually end up living there, generally speaking, and we own and manage about 3,400 apartments, I think. So we have a lot of sort of data about this. The people who end up living there, for the most part, want to have a connection to where they live. It isn't just about affordable housing. It's about affordable housing in a place that they want to live. And while there are exceptions to that, a great percentage of the people who live here will have a local connection. It may be that they don't live in Ossining now, but they work in Ossining and they drive 45 minutes to get here. Maybe they work in the school district. It may be that they work a town away. But you're going to get a lot of local people who actually end up living here. As Karen said, and it's true by our data, every year the percentage of local people gets higher because as the building gets older, you get more local people on your waiting list and you end up having that happen. The other thing I'll say is that we're very active, as are others, at building affordable housing in Westchester. It's incredibly hard to do. But just like we can't give a preference in Ossining for Ossining people, at Chappaqua Crossing, in Tarrytown, on a couple of projects we built in the town of Cortland and Croton, we can't give preference there either. So essentially what we all need to be doing is building affordable housing so that the residents who wanted to live in Ossining, but there was no affordable housing, who live in our development at Round Top in Cortland, they get to live in that development because we couldn't just give preference there for Cortland residents. So essentially, this is all of our problem, and I think by increasing the inventory of affordable housing in Westchester, it helps with the overall problem.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Amy, you see any?
I saw Joe had a question again, but it looks like he's put his hand back down. There he is again. I'm going to bring Joe over one more time. All right, thank you.
Hey, Joe, welcome back.
I had my question you actually answered 3 times. You said it's a rental property. It's not, for purchase. The only other thing, and I think it was Manny that talked about the Harbor Square project, and I think Bill Bolter mentioned the fact that this property is about 7 feet higher than Harbor Square. I've been around this town long enough to remember 3 or 4 feet of water in front of the DPW garage, and one of the reasons that Mr. Capelli bailed out literally on that parcel and for some reason decided to keep the property that was more underwater was because he felt he couldn't build on this site. Now, I think it's great that you're figuring out how to manage that, but I know, and I think Paul will have been around long enough to know 3 or 4 times where that piece of Water Street was 3 or 4 feet underwater. So anyway, that's great. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that I really think that Stuart is sort of got that Sean Connery look going on. Anyway, have a good night. This was great. I think I'm going to go listen to Sandy now.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't see anybody else right now.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen, thank you all for joining. We are, again, we'll be having more of these, so stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll be posting this so you can review it. And please, if you think of a question, call, email it in. We are here. We're excited and enthused to be doing things in a way that really serves the needs of our community. So we want to hear from you. We want your input because that's what will make this the best possible project it can be. So did I see? Wait, another question.
We have one person.
I knew if I talk long enough, somebody else would raise their hand.
All right, it's Joe and Byrne. I'm going to bring that person over. Thank you.
Good evening.
Joe and Byrne, you need to unmute your computer.
Hey, sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay.
I'm old and unadept. But anyway, I'm Bernadette DeAngelis, and I live in the town, but I'm always thinking about where I would be going to. My children are grown, and I live in a pretty big house for me. How many parking spaces were going to be in the garage?
About 159 for the apartments and roughly about 45 or 48 in addition for village use.
So how many, how do you determine who gets parking spaces in the residentially wise?
Depending on what the village asks us to do, we'll determine it one way or another. Sometimes we do assigned parking, sometimes we don't. While parking is always a big concern, we find in buildings like this where you have, you're sort of near downtown, you're near a train, we actually think this building will be way over parked. There'll be certain people who have 2 cars, certainly.
Right.
There'll certainly be people with no cars. So we will probably advocate to not do assigned parking, because what happens is you assign a number of parking spaces for each unit. It doesn't allow for the variation in people having cars and not. So my assumption is, as long as we don't do assigned parking, we will have well more than enough parking.
Also, somebody like me who's retired, quite retired, I should say, and not fond of walking, especially on hills, I've always thought, why couldn't we have a jitney service up into the village, into shopping areas, and back and forth? If I drive now, of course, but I mean, there may come a time when I won't drive, and I won't walk up the hill, and I won't order online everything. You know, I want to go to church, and I want to go meet friends, and so on and so forth. What about a jitney service, and who would that be provided by?
So, hi, Joan, this is Karen DeTore. A jitney service wouldn't be necessarily part of this project.
Yeah.
However, there is, you know, the village is looking at right now, we're also involved in parking and transportation study and various things to look at ways we can make it easier to get around in our village in a more sustainable way, and serve people who may decide they don't want cars anymore and they prefer to use a jitney and car service when they need to. So those are actually things we're looking at. And there are several companies now, and this is becoming more and more popular. We're looking at, and this is the reason we're really keen on trying to maybe even pilot some of these services in the relatively near future. There's different electric vehicles, different types of jitney type things and trolleys that are becoming more prevalent. Typically, you know, they start in larger communities where there's more volume. One of the challenges we have is we're a little bit on the small side, and we have a lot of hills. But I think that this is a trend that is here to stay, and it's something that we're very supportive of promoting. So while it's not necessarily a component of this particular project, we hope to see that type of transportation in the future in Ossining.
Oh, great. Also, going back to the parking, is parking in addition, of course it would be in addition to the rentals, but any idea how much that would cost?
The parking is actually free for the tenants. There's no charge for the tenants.
Ah, okay.
Just while it may not be something you're interested in, just because we have the public on this Zoom call, I neglected to mention that one of the things we started to do that we will do here is we'll have charging in the garage for electric bikes as well. So that one of the challenges in Ossining would be riding from Water Street up that hill to the downtown with an electric bike. That's not a challenge.
I have to think about that then. Thank you all.
All right. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. So, any additional questions? Now's your opportunity. We want to hear from you. Okay, then.
That's good.
I think that we're very happy to be here tonight. We will be back, and again, feel free to contact us. All of us, the manager, Jaime, Paul, we're all available. Our emails are available on the website, as well as the Board of Trustees and the mayor, Assistant Village Manager Zahach. We're all readily available to answer your questions. And we can certainly refer those questions to our developer here, Bill Balter, and his partner, Jack Durkin. So again,
Karen?
thank you all for coming tonight. Yes.
I just want to add, if folks do want to get in touch with everybody who's on here, plan, P as in Peter, L as in Larry, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy at villageofossining.org. We'll get the entire Board of Trustees, as well as Karen, myself, and Jaime.
Thank you, Maddie. I was going to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so we have a lot of ways we can be reached. It's hard for us to be out of reach. So, and we're happy to be in touch with everybody. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you to Wilder Balter Partners tonight. Thank you to the village staff. Thank you to the Board of Trustees, and thank you, Mayor. And Jamie Hoffman, who has coordinated all of this too, who's behind the scenes there on the riverfront. Have a lovely evening, and we will see you soon.
Thank
Good night, everybody.
Night.
you.